welcome to Healthy Chats with the Docs. Well, today it's doctors, not just doc. So I'm glad that today we're going to talk about babies and making babies.
Yay!
Yes, it's so great. I'll never forget a woman, with COVID, people don't come to the pharmacies, they wait outside. And there was a woman and she talked about how excited she was because we helped her make a baby with her and her doctor. And so I think that's what we're going to talk about today. So what we're talking about is folate supplementation, and there's a lot of questions around it. There's a lot of different types of folate, but there's a lot of natural approaches to it. So what we want to talk about today is what is the association with this umbrella called folate with getting pregnant and fertility. And then also I think that there's side effects related to folate supplementation too with certain babies once they're actually made. So I want to kind of talk about that too. So with that, why don't you introduce Dr. Baker, Dr. Leverone, and you can talk a little bit about why you're an expert in this spot.
Yeah, so for those of you joining us on YouTube and Zoom live now, Dr. Baker is joining the Healthy Chats today. She works with us here at our office, as she is a naturopathic doctor and a doula, which is somebody that supports the mother and the father in the birthing process. And her specialty is helping women with fertility. So that's why she's joining us today, because this is definitely her area and her chance to sort of discuss with you what she does and the importance of folate, which is what we're talking about today.
Great. So let's talk about it. The statistics are pretty compelling that proper supplementation and proper folate levels as far as helping women get pregnant, they're significant. And so, the studies show it matters. And it also shows that there's a lower risk of having neural tube defects as well.
Right.
So can you kind of explain at a very high level why that is? And then we'll start digging into what the different levels of folate is and how genetic mutations may affect that.
Yeah, you want to take that?
Sure. So folate is a B vitamin, B9, and it is required for cell division. So every cell in your body needs folate in order to divide and create new cells. And what happens when you're pregnant and you are growing a baby? Rapid cell division, especially during those first month of after you conceive, because you're literally growing a baby from one cell. It's just rapidly multiplying. So most neural tube defects, brain defects, and birth defects that end up in a miscarriage, whether the mother even knows that she was pregnant or not, she might just think that she got her normal period that month, but those are due to nutrient deficiencies that cause birth defects that then end up in a miscarriage. So it's really important that we have high levels of folate and other B vitamins and all nutrients and minerals in general to make sure that these cells are getting what they need to be able to properly divide and create that healthy environment for a new baby that's going to grow in the mother's womb.
That's great. When you think about it, we're all made from a single cell. We are little miracles, aren't we? Yeah, that's great.
I don't know if we're going to get to this, but one of the things too that we talk about is that if you're planning on getting pregnant, that you need to be starting, like she was saying, a lot of early miscarriages and birth defects happen in those first few weeks after conception when women don't even know they're pregnant yet.
Yeah.
Which is why, when Dr. Baker works with people on fertility, we're always making sure that they're already on folate and their other nutrients, because that's so important in those early stages.
Right.
It's really important. Yeah. I know there's things like progesterone and all those types of things too, but that's why everybody should have a personalized plan onto doing that. But so let's talk about it. If you're planning on getting pregnant, a really good thing is to talk to your functional medicine doctor,
right,
and get the right analysis of, where you're at nutritionally and some of your biomarkers, but also genetics. So let's talk a little bit about, you talk about folate. There's a lot of other good research about a genetic mutation called the MTHFR mutation. We talk a lot about it. A lot of moms talk about it on these mommy blogs and that kind of thing. But what about the MTHFR mutation and proper folate? How do, I mean, if I have the MTHFR mutation, it doesn't mean I can't have a baby or I'm not going to have a healthy baby. It just means I need to properly address that. So how would you work with somebody that may have an MTHFR mutation that's wanting to get pregnant?
Yeah, well, from the genetic perspective, which, you know, as we know, I do a lot of, the MTHFR enzyme is the enzyme that converts folate into methylfolate, which is the active form of folate. So if you have an MTHFR mutation, then you don't efficiently convert folate into methylfolate and therefore aren't going to get the active form of folate. And as we just discussed, we need that folate for cell division, but we need the active form of the folate. So without the MTHFR, you're going to be less likely to get that folate, that active form of the folate that you need for that cell division.
That's a really good point. So like one of the, I mean, we've talked about genetic testing and how important it is. So this is just another reason to go to somebody who knows how to interpret genetics. And because if you're wanting to have a baby, it's in, both the man and the woman, right, who's going to have the baby. It's important to kind of know because that's how we make our DNA. But you mentioned something that I hear all the time. People say folate, and then there's methylfolate, and there's folic acid. They think it's all the same thing. It's kind of a big bucket. Can you kind of break it down for people? Because I think what you said can be misinterpreted and oversimplified.
Right. Yeah. You should talk about that one.
Okay. So a lot of the times these are referred to all as the same thing, but we're here to bust that myth.
Yeah, they're not.
Folic acid, which is sometimes my arch nemesis, is the cheap synthetic lab derived version of B9, and it is not the active form. Your body has to do a lot of work to convert it to the active form. So in many people, not only are they not getting the right dosage in the prenatal, but they're getting the wrong form. They're getting folic acid. Now, folate alone, folate is what we get from food. So folate is a natural source. It's not synthetic, not made in a lab. And it's much easier for our body to convert the folate from food to methylfolate, which is the active form. So that's more natural for our bodies. Oftentimes, if you have the MTHFR, you might need a little more support, but that is kind of the runaround. The folic acid is not the beneficial, healthy, natural B9 vitamin. Folate is. And if you need to add the methyl group to it for specific genetic mutation reasons, then you can take the methylfolate version.
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. And like the only thing I would add to that is that what's important to know is that not only is folic acid not the active form and some people can't process, but it's also problematic because it will bind to the receptors, but the body can't use it. And instead it will block your actual folate or methylfolate from getting in, it interferes. So if you aren't getting enough folate from your diet and you're supplementing with a lot of folic acid, you're actually running interference on your own folate process as well too. So that's the other piece that I would add to that.
Yeah, so it's just like not all B9s are created equal is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, very much not. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about there's so many different kinds of prenatal vitamins in it, and it sounds like it's pretty important to understand which type of B9 you should take, and there's really not a blood test or anything. I mean, the only thing you can really do is genetic testing to help you figure that out. Is that a true statement?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, you want to obviously know if you have an MTHFR. That's going to be important because that'll determine if you have a higher need for support with the methyl groups and need to support methylating your folate. There are serum blood tests where you can measure like your folate levels and your B12 levels. Those are okay, but these are water soluble vitamins in the water space of the blood. So it's very transient. Like if you had a bowl of spinach yesterday, your blood draw the next day is going to say that your folate levels are fine, but they may only be fine in that moment because you ate spinach yesterday. So there are other tests that can do more in-depth. There are some functional tests that we use that can give us more in-depth testing to kind of measure our B12 and folate levels, to see if you have sufficient levels. But definitely looking at that and then looking at the genetics are important components together to make sure that you're getting exactly what it is that you need.
So I think sometimes, being women, and we always assume it's the mom does all the work and having the baby, but just to conceive, it does take two. So what about the folate levels, not only in the mom, but does the folate levels in the dad matter too?
Of course. So unlike women who are born with all of our eggs and our ovaries already at birth, we don't have to produce those. They are with us from day zero. Males have to produce their sperm, and it takes about 60 days for the sperm to go from one cell to maturity to be able to fertilize the egg for conception. And the studies have shown that men who supplement for 6 months before trying to conceive increase their sperm motility, their sperm quality, and their sperm stability, which are the three main things you're trying to do when you're working with the male part of fertility. So other supplements help too, zinc and selenium, but B vitamins are like the key there. And the study that I was looking at yesterday, all they did was give them B vitamins for 6 months, and it increased the quantity of the sperm, 74%.
74%?
Wow. Yeah.
Wow. That's a big number. Yeah. Yeah. And so it's kind of fun because you're counseling, you're couple counseling. we both have to eat healthy. We both have to supplement, right?
When your wife says to put down the pizza, I need a salad, right?
It takes two.
You have to listen to her.
Yeah, I gotta have some spinach with that beer. It's good. So that's really important. So I think it's especially, if you're a couple, it's important that you kind of work on this together, and you work with your doctor together on that, and that there are natural ways of doing that, and that there's a lot of good things you can do.
Yeah. And it is like, Dr. Ray was saying, it's so easy. Like, it's just, yes, we want you to eat the whole foods, and we can supplement with the right form to also support the process, especially if there's a higher need.
Yeah. So let's talk about depression, pregnancy, and folate, because, pregnancy is supposed to be a happy time. Why would someone be depressed if they're pregnant? There might be a biochemistry reason for that. Is that true? Like, and how does that all work?
Yeah. So in general, studies show that even if you're not pregnant, people with low levels of folate have a higher risk for depression. Yeah. And then couple that with the fact that you're growing a baby who's literally siphoning off all of the nutrients from you to grow itself, right, in your womb, you're going to be depleted regardless. So that's why I recommend when women come to see me that if we have 6 months to a year to work before you're trying to conceive, that's ideal, because we can really, really build up your stores. If that's not the case, we'll just hit it hard for those few months before. But ideally 6 to 12 months to really make sure that you're at a level where growing a baby and, giving a decent amount of the nutrients from your body to that baby isn't going to completely wipe you out, because that will lead to higher risk of depression. And you have a lot going on when you're pregnant, your body's changing. There's a lot of things, like even mindset wise, that you're not used to. And if you're a first time mom, it can be overwhelming. And to kind of further that, a lot of women don't take their prenatal after they have the baby.
Yeah.
So they kind of just stop right then and there, whether they're too busy to take a bunch of pills every day or whatnot. They think they don't need it. Their doctor doesn't tell them that they should continue it, etc. Especially if they're breastfeeding, they should continue the prenatal for at least 6 months after to replete their stores. And that's what I commonly see in a lot of women with postpartum depression in my doula business, is just they stop supplementing and they're so busy focusing on their baby, which is also so important to nurture the baby and create that bond, but you still have to give yourself what you need so that you can fully show up for the baby.
Well, that's fascinating. So it is interesting because you do hear about postpartum depression and you're like, well, gosh, you just had a baby, or, and it's, It
Yeah.
can be debilitating, right?
Yeah.
It's so common. Yeah. And poor women, they feel that way too. They're like, I just had a baby. I should be so happy. Why am I so depressed? And like Dr. Baker said, it can be that deficiency. That baby just sucked everything out of you, you got to make sure you're replenishing yourself.
And then breastfeeding too. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
just giving away so many more nutrients and everything. So it's really important to continue eating really healthy and eating a high amount of calories and supplementing after you give birth.
That's great. Because we do forget that, it does take a lot out of you when you're doing that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're a doula. So what does that mean to someone who doesn't know what that is?
So there are different kinds of doulas. I specialize in being a birth doula. So I work with women and I show up for them during the birth. We have a few meetings beforehand to get to know each other and learn some good techniques for managing pain and just informational stuff about pregnancy and what it looks like the whole birth process. And then I support women emotionally, physically, and informationally, I guess you could say, during the birthing process to make sure that it's going according to their birth plan, that they're feeling empowered, and basically just to advocate for what they want and what kind of birth they desire to have.
And the dad too.
Yeah, and the dad. I honestly feel like a lot of my doula patients, I spend more time helping the dad because he's like, what should I be doing? Like he wasn't prepared. So back to our fertility stuff, if the male and the female start working together 6 to 12 months before, then he'll be on board the whole way and he'll be much more involved in the process. And then when that day comes for the baby, he'll be more ready and prepared.
That's great. We do sometimes forget that, we've got to bring out the feminine side in our males too.
Yeah, it comes very natural to the women giving birth, whether they anticipate that or not. But for the males, it's a little more rocky.
Yeah, they just want to fix whatever's happening and they don't know what to do.
Yep.
That's great. Well, as always, these 15 minutes go really fast. But I guess into the summary, it's really important if you're wanting to have a baby or you're doing some family planning to see your doctor early on to, prepare your body physically, not just mentally, but physically. There are some things that can work for a lot of people that are very natural. It might just be diet. It might be some simple supplementation. It's important to really get a picture of the whole person, including the genetics.
Yeah.
What else would you say if I was coming in and not at my age, but saying, hey, we want to have a baby? What's the course that you do at your practice?
I would say that I have 4 or 5 things that I want to check for everyone. So I want to make sure that they don't have high levels of inflammation because that can contribute to a harder time getting pregnant and a more difficult pregnancy. And that includes everything from reducing your toxic burden, working on gut health to make sure that you're not having food sensitivities and reacting to certain things, making sure you haven't been exposed to mold or heavy metals, which are the environmental toxins. I also like to focus a lot on nutrition, like we were talking about, because if you're preparing with 6 to 12 months before you're trying to conceive, there's plenty of time to learn and eat the way so that you don't have to supplement so much, essentially. If you're within just a few months, it's probably good to just take a really high dose prenatal. And I recommend that to everyone, but you can really help to build up your stores with food beforehand. So I like to educate my patients on that. And like you mentioned before, I just really think that getting in the right mental space is super important. Knowing what to expect, giving resources, making sure that my patients are in alignment with what they want their birth plan to be. They're taking childbirth classes, they're educated on that kind of stuff, because it can make the process a lot smoother if they just have even a little bit of information and know what to expect, as opposed to just walking in there and being like, oh my gosh, this is happening, I was not prepared.
Yeah, our old saying from our friend Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better, right?
Right.
Or you know more, you do better, right?
Yeah.
So great. Well, ladies, thank you. And thanks for joining us, Dr. Baker.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Well, okay. Until next week, you guys stay healthy and we'll take care.